symptoms. So in the detox cycle continues because you sort of clear one layer and then the body wants to clear whatever it discovers underneath that layer needs to be cleared. So then it'll clear that. And then there's another layer. So there's just so many layers. You do reach a point where, I mean, even when I do detoxes, so like I did, like my general eating is basically fruits and vegetables all day, or maybe even juices all day. And then like a little bit of protein at the end of the day with vegetables, broccoli, potatoes, mushrooms, like whatever I've got. And then every once in a while, I'll do a deeper detox. So when I did the juice detox back in May, even though I've been eating clean for 10 years, it completely took me down for 3 days. And then if I'm on vacation, for example, right? And which means, you know, on vacation, you eat a little bit differently. You're not at home, you don't have your kitchen. You want to try the cuisine of like a new country that you're visiting, or you just don't want to be thinking all the time about what I'm eating, what I'm putting in your body. That's normal. So when I come back from vacation and I go back to my routine, again, there's like a couple of days of readjustment, even though I've been doing this for 10 years. So it's a normal part. Your body's always wanting to clear. The body's always wanting to get rid of what's not serving it, always. It's built into you. You know, you have your detox organs, you have your lymphatic system, which is basically your body's garbage disposal system. And when we see an overflow of that, like imagine sort of like your lymphatic system is like the septic tank in your house, right? If that's not regularly being emptied, it's going to overflow. And that's what happens with your body. It reaches overflow point. And that's when you see all the symptoms. So we clear it out so we can start from scratch. And don't ever be worried from now on. It's really important not to be worried when you feel those symptoms. They're not symptoms of something going wrong. They're not symptoms of the body breaking down. They're not symptoms of illness. Even if, as you're going through the process now, for example, if you feel a flu, right? If you feel like you actually feel what's conventionally labeled as being sick, that's nothing more than the body releasing toxins. The flu or getting a cold or being sick at any time is without you knowing it. Now, of course, you're going to know, but without you having known it, is your body's lymphatic system and your body's detox organs reaching an overflow, reaching a tipping point, and then they just release it. They release it in mucus. They release it through diarrhea. They release it through the body aches. If you get a fever, that's just a sign that your body's working really hard. Like it's like a revved up engine working hard to make you better. It's not a sign that your body's weak or breaking down. People panic over fevers, but a fever is a really, really good thing. And it usually takes about 3 days for a fever. And most people panic on the first day or the second day. If you were just to wait, literally 72, usually 72 hours. That's when a fever breaks. You're fine without even taking medication, without doing anything, just allowing your body to clear and cleanse. That's all it wants to do. So when we keep taking all these over-the-counter medications, right? Cold medications, flu medications, you don't really have, a flu. Like even if and there's a lot of theory around this sort of contagion versus germ theory. Not going to get into that, but let's assume we're going to go with the conventional theory that you catch a virus. Even if you catch a virus, then that's just your body trying to get rid of the virus. Why would the body's so smart? Why would it want to keep a virus? So all it does is tries to get rid of it. So the signs that your body's getting rid of it, same ways to get rid of the food toxins you're eating, is to repel it out of the body, and that takes work. So that's a fever, that's a runny nose, that's a headache, that's body aches, same exact process, whether the body's getting rid of your food toxins or it's getting rid of pathogens or it's getting rid of a virus. Some people have really very strong emotional releases. So if you're going through a very stressful time and you are taking in a lot of negativity, like a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, those are also toxic to the body. You might have a breakdown and have the same symptoms as a cold, but actually what your body's getting rid of is emotional toxicity. So the process is the same. And I want you to really, really empower yourself with that from now on, if it's something that's like 3 to 5 days of runny nose, body aches, flu symptoms, headaches, even vomiting, right? Diarrhea, fever for 3 days, that's your body working for you. That's not your body breaking down. The body is working really hard. It knows, like your body's detoxing all the time and getting rid of toxicity all the time, whether you're on a detox program or not, like whether you are intentionally triggering the detox process or not. All right. Ingy, do you mind? I don't know if you wanted to, like, you had a comment or a question, but if you don't mind, we'll keep it till the end because I see a lot of people have joined, and today we have quite a bit to cover today. So I'm just going to be mindful of everybody's time. I hope everybody's feeling great. What I want to talk to you about today is I always wait until the second week until you're sort of settled in your eating routine before we get into more, deeper education, which is basically, I want to talk to you about your hormones today. We keep talking about my hormones, but I need you to understand what they are. It's, again, knowledge is power. You need to understand, like, what are these things inside my body that are creating all these issues that I have. And as women, we joke around a lot about hormones. Look, my hormones are going crazy. Oh, it's my hormones. But do we actually understand what these hormones are? Do we actually know what the function of the hormones are? Do we actually know how many hormones we have and the different types of hormones that we have? Like, can you speak intelligently and with confidence about your hormones? We all need to. Everybody should be able to, but none of us do. We just think of them as like these random things that just make my life really, really difficult sometimes. So before I get into the different types of hormones, there's a lot of hormones. I'm not going to cover all of them. I'm only going to go through the three main categories of hormones as they apply to the majority of the people in the program. But before I get into that, I just want to make a distinction that is also a really important distinction that many women get confused on. And a few of you have also asked me, which is, what's the difference between perimenopause and menopause? Perimenopause is, what happens before menopause, and it can start anywhere between, in your 30s and last all the way until your mid 40s to late 40s. And this is when you might still have a very regular period. Your period is still coming every month on time. It might not. It might start to get a little bit irregular. But at the same time, that's when we see the symptoms like night sweats, hot flashes, irritability, hair loss, fatigue. Those are all the symptoms we associate with perimenopause, when, like, in your early 20s and early 30s, you didn't have any of that. And then all of a sudden you start to feel it. And that can last anywhere from 8 to 10 years for some women. Menopause is something we don't actually know we're in until it's over, because menopause is when you haven't had your period for 12 consecutive months. So 12 months in a row. So not 1 month you get it, 1 month you don't, 2 months you get it, 2 months you don't. That's still perimenopause. Menopause is when you can count 12 months and then you're like, oh, it's been 12 months. So that's why it's kind of like retroactive. You discover that you're done with perimenopause, or you're in menopause when the 12 months have passed. So this is a really important distinction for you to know. If your period is irregular right now, 1 month on, 1 month off, that's not menopause, that's perimenopause. Only when some women can go for 5 months without it and then they'll get it. That's still perimenopause, not menopause. All right. So just know that distinction. After that, the three main types of hormones are your sex hormones, your metabolic hormones, and your stress hormones. These are the ones that there's so many other little ones, but these are the big ones. Like, these are the ones that really, when they're off, we see all the different issues and all the different symptoms that you guys have here. And here's what you need to know about hormones. Hormones they're these chemical messengers in your body. And they're in charge of communicating and sending out information to just about every single organ and every single system in your body. There's a hormone that corresponds with every single organ and every single system in your body. That's how important they are. They're produced in what's called your endocrine system. If you remember from school, endocrine system is like your pituitary gland, your thyroid gland, your ovaries, your adrenals, your pancreas. It's the organs that produce the hormones, and they each produce a different kind of hormone that has a different function. And these organs produce the hormones and then release them into your body so they can do whatever it is that they need to do. And these hormones need to be released in specific amounts and at certain times and in certain intensities and combinations. And if any one of them is released too fast or releases too little or releases too much, it can throw off all of the other hormones. So imagine sort of like an orchestra playing, right? They all have to play together in tune and in time. Otherwise, you can hear it and you can feel it, everything goes off. So the hormones are involved obviously in your reproduction, your sex hormones, in digestion, in stress, in your emotions, in your digestion, in your emotional health. All of that goes back to your hormones, and everything in your body can be linked back, whether you're conscious of it or not, to some type of hormone. So, and vice versa. So you might be thinking, okay, there's something off with my sex hormones because my period is irregular. Then we look at obviously that's your ovaries, and you might not be thinking or know that that's actually related to your liver. And it's because the liver is the one that can't process your estrogen hormone. So everything is connected. I don't need you to know like every single one of those details. Just remember that there is no system in your body that works independently. There is no system in your body, like your digestive system, your respiratory system, your circulatory system, your reproductive system, your immune system. Every single one of those relies on and depends on, is affected by all the other systems. They don't work in isolation. Okay, so you might want to take out a pen and paper for this as I just go through the different types of hormones. Like I said, sex hormones, stress hormones, and your thyroid and metabolic hormones. So sex hormones are the ones typically that women are more in tune with, even if you might not recognize it as a category, because basically they're the ones that control your cycle. Control when you have your period, whether you have your period, controls if you have a good period, pain-free period, painful period. All of those goes back to your sex hormones, which are estrogen, which is the dominant one for women, and then progesterone, and then there's testosterone for men also. So estrogen is the main one for women, testosterone is the equivalent for men. And estrogen is that hormone that really makes you a woman. It's like it gives you all of those characteristics, right? The curviness, the soft, we're not like tight and muscular like men, we're more soft, gives us our soft voice, gives us our breasts, like it does everything that makes us feminine. And it's really important because it regulates your period. We also have a little bit of testosterone, and then progesterone is the one that's mainly really active when we're pregnant. So progesterone is the one that when you are pregnant, it's really important for keeping your pregnancy viable and making sure the pregnancy flows through the 9 months in a healthy way. But when we see any disturbance in any of these, right, this is right away, that it's a sex hormone because your period is off. You get the mood swings, you get the PMS before your period, you get the headaches before your period, you get the sugar cravings, you get the bloating, like all of those things, right? Your breasts feel, swollen or like tender. We know that when we see that, that is a sign of imbalance in our sex hormones. So that one's kind of easy for women. If you didn't know, then you can just say, right, all the issues I'm going through related to my period, if you have fibroids, if you have endometriosis, if you have PCOS, all of those are related to your sex hormones. After that, we have stress hormones. So this one is more universal. It affects men and women equally. Your stress hormones are basically cortisol and adrenaline and a couple of other ones, but mainly cortisol. And what your stress hormones do is they prepare you emotionally and physically when you are faced with a situation where you have to either, flee the situation or face the situation, flight or fight. And what happens is that, again, we go back to our ancient programming, our ancient physiology. We've evolved from ancient man, hasn't changed very much. We've evolved in terms of our mental capabilities, but physiologically in terms of how our bodies function, that's pretty much stayed the same. And so one of our instincts is to flee when something is about to kill us, right? Or if we feel like we can fight it, we're going to stand our ground and fight it. Back then, of course, what were they fighting? So it was usually an animal that's running after them and wants to eat them. Maybe there was a war, maybe there was a neighboring clan they had to fight with. There was really stressful situation. So the body would prepare and like pump cortisol and pump the adrenaline to help them fight the animal or to help them, fight in the war or whatever it is that they had to fight with. Obviously, in this day and age, we're not being chased by animals, and the majority of us are not in armies or fighting wars, but that instinct of, do I fight something or do I flee something, is still there. The difference is, what are we actually faced with? What is it that we're fighting with or fleeing? And it's in our modern day life, it's our spouses, it's our kids, it's our jobs, it's, the current events, it's politics, it's friends, it's issues, like it's all everything that you call stress in your life. Your body has to make a decision many times a day, whether it's going to fight this stress trigger or it's going to flee this stress trigger. But the thing is, every time you make that decision, the body gets ready. And the body pumps cortisol for you to do that. Every time you're faced with a stressful situation, like you wake up in the morning and you have an argument with your kids, that's considered you're fighting. If you have an argument with your spouse, that's considered you're fighting, which means the body has to give you energy by pumping cortisol. If you're running around and you're late and you're trying to get things together in the morning, you're trying to get your kids out of the house and you're trying to get to work on time, that's you fighting. So the body's going to pump cortisol. And you keep doing that many, many, many times during the day. And each one of you, you're going to have your own specific set of triggers, a deadline at work, or annoying boss, or an annoying colleague, or, having to rush home and be on time for your kids and make food and grocery shop and then get everybody together at night, get homework done. And all of these things that you feel you have to complete every day require your body to pump cortisol to give you the energy to complete them. But think of it this way, because it's the equivalent of you fighting or fleeing something that's about to kill you. Imagine fighting and fleeing an animal or a war instead of every single one of those different instances in your life. You're going to be exhausted. You're going to be exhausted. That's why we have such an epidemic of fatigue. Our bodies are exhausted because our bodies are not meant to be in a high state of fighting all day long, fighting and fleeing. That's not how we're supposed to function. So the body keeps pumping cortisol, and the body doesn't have a finite amount of cortisol, and it just keeps pumping. So the adrenal glands, you have an adrenal gland on top of each kidney. So if you put your hands around your waist, and where your thumb hits at the back of your waist, some of you have been experiencing some pain there. That's your kidneys filtering. That's also where you have your adrenal glands, and these are the ones that produce and pump cortisol. They get exhausted to the point where you might have heard of something called adrenal fatigue, which causes you to be extremely tired and not able to function. It's because they're constantly pumping cortisol. They're constantly responding to stress. That's your stress hormone, which responds to, by the way, is also very important, responds to what you eat in the same way as it responds to your external triggers. So when you drink coffee, when you eat the junk, when you eat the Coke, when you drink the alcohol, when you have popcorn, when you have too much animal protein and too much animal fat, when you eat the pizza, when you eat the bread, when you eat the cheese, your adrenal glands are also going to pump cortisol, because that's an internal emergency that the body has to deal with. You have your external emergencies, then there's the internal emergencies that you don't even know about, sort of an internal fire that cortisol is trying to, put out. That's cortisol's job, because if you recall, whenever anybody gets really, really sick and you have like a severe infection, how do doctors manage very intense, severe, quick infections? They give the synthetic version of cortisol, which is cortisone, because that is the hormone that is literally known to quickly bring the body back to where it needs to be, quickly puts out an infection, quickly puts out a fire, so to speak. So imagine that it's doing that for you every single time you're eating an inflammatory food, every single time you're eating a toxic food, on top of all the other external triggers that you have. So you can imagine how that makes your body exhausted, why you might not be able to sleep, why you can't focus, why you have then palpitations, anxiety, depression. All of those are a result of your stress hormones being imbalanced. And then the biggest sign that you have imbalanced stress hormones is what we call the cortisol belly, because when the body's pumping cortisol and there's an excess, the body can't eliminate the excess fast enough. So it collects in your belly, and you end up with something called a cortisol belly. Let me know so far, ladies, put it in the chat. How many of you feel that you have a major imbalance in your stress hormones, and how many of you feel it's more sex hormones? How many of you feel like it's a combination of both? Put it in the chat, and then I'm going to talk about thyroid hormones next. Seeing a major increase in thyroid and what's referred to as autoimmune issues in the past year and a half, in the past 2 years, major increase. I used to only see it in like a handful of clients. Now I see it in almost all my clients who come to me. Your thyroid is right here, and you can have one of two thyroid conditions. Either it's too active, hyperthyroidism, or underactive, which is hypothyroidism. If it's too active, we see things like rapid weight loss, right? You see things because it's working too fast, rapid weight loss, loose stools all the time, palpitations, you can't tolerate heat, and nervousness, anxiety, which obviously means you can't sleep. An interesting one is if you have curly or curly-ish hair, it becomes straighter. So let's say you have curly hair, and then you know, with curly hair, you can kind of go like this and the curl stays. You stop being able to do that. That's a sign of hyperthyroidism. Underactive, which is hypothyroidism, is the opposite of that. You have a really hard time losing weight. You're always very tired, and you have a hard time losing weight. And then what ends up happening is you gain weight really easily. A lot of brain fog. It always feels like your brain is just clouded over. You can't remember things. You might have dizziness, concentration. You know, you feel like sort of like you go through your day, you're not sure like if you finished all the things you need to finish or not. Instead of loose stools, you're constipated. What else? Aches and pains. Your hands might feel cold, like just your hands. Like the rest of you feels nice and warm. And if you touch your body, it feels warm, but your hands only, or your feet are cold. That's hypothyroidism. Okay, and then the final one is insulin. This one, you know, you have an issue with it if you have been diagnosed with insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, or diabetes. And this one, obviously, this is where all the controversy is around sugar and the kinds of sugar. We don't become insulin resistant or pre-diabetic from the sugar from fruits. The way that insulin resistance happens, like what is the definition of that? Like what is insulin resistant to? If you recall, I told you the whole reason that we eat is to feed our cells. At in the most basic explanation we have for why do we eat, to feed our cells. You have 100 trillion cells in your body. Every single organ is made up of cells, millions and millions of cells. You need to feed the cells so that the cells for each organ can make sure each organ is functioning well, which means then each system is functioning well, which then means you're functioning well. So these cells only recognize certain types of food. They only recognize, you know, the sugar, which is fuel from fruits. They recognize the live vitamins, the live minerals, the live hydration, the enzymes, the phytonutrients, the antioxidants, the protein. That's all they recognize. They don't recognize processed food. They don't recognize junk food. They don't recognize alcohol or Diet Coke or a protein bar or popcorn or chips. They don't recognize any of that. And most of that is what we refer to as processed sugar. So insulin's job is to make sure that these cells get the fuel in the form of sugar that they need so they can function. So insulin's job is to move sugar out of your bloodstream and into the cells. But since most of us are eating the wrong sugar, here's what happens. You eat your piece of bread. The sugar from the piece of bread, which is the toxic sugar, goes into your bloodstream. Insulin is right. Oh, there's sugar coming in. Let me go grab that sugar. Let me go give it to the cell. Insulin goes, your body pumps insulin. So the insulin level is raised. Insulin goes and takes that sugar, drives it to your cell, but your cell is like, that's the wrong sugar. I don't want that. and it doesn't open up and allow insulin to bring in the sugar. So then insulin is like, okay, let me try harder. So the body pumps more insulin. That's how you get another, rush of insulin. Let me try harder to get the sugar into the cell. So it tries harder, brings that sugar into the cell, and the cell is like, okay, fine, maybe I'll take a little bit because there's nothing else. So it lets in a little bit of the sugar. And then you keep doing this again. And every single time, the cells are like, okay, you're still bringing me the wrong sugar. It's the wrong sugar, but fine, I'll take a little bit because there's nothing else. You're not eating the sugar from the fruits. You're just eating the sugar from bread and pasta and rice cakes and popcorn and junk. Fine. Takes in a little bit, not all of it. But as insulin keeps trying to do this, the cells become more and more stubborn. Like, I'm not going to keep taking this wrong sugar they keep trying to give me. So at a certain point, they just shut down. And the insulin can't do its job. So it's the cells shut their gates, so to speak, and the insulin resistance happens because the cells are resistant to the insulin. The cells are the ones that are not allowing the insulin to drive the food through, the fuel through, because it's the wrong one. So first it starts off with insulin resistance. The cells are just like, okay, one time yes, one time no. Then they're like, we don't want it, done. So then you get into pre-diabetes. You don't fix that, then it goes into full-blown diabetes. Cells, you don't become insulin resistant. The cells don't fight insulin when insulin is bringing in the right sugar. So that's an easy fix. How do you fix that? And how do you get the insulin and the cells to work together and to collaborate and to, do their job? Get rid of the stuff that the cells don't want. Give your body the sugar that it does need and want to function. And then you see the insulin levels drop. Initially, they might still stay high because you have that insulin resistance, right? That balance has been tipped, it's been broken, and the trust between insulin and cells has been broken. So it does take time for all of that to recalibrate. But the way to heal diabetes is not to eat a little piece of bread in the morning and a ma'laqat ruz at lunch and another nus ma'laqat pasta at night and ignore fruits. You haven't fixed the problem. Fixing the problem means get rid of the stuff that the cells don't want and give them what they need. So that's insulin and insulin resistance. And if you haven't been diagnosed with a blood test, the symptoms for insulin resistance are if you're constantly hungry, right? Because you haven't fed the cells. When the cells are hungry, you're hungry. So if you're constantly hungry, specifically, and what you interpret as a sugar craving, a carbohydrate craving, it's because your cells haven't gotten their fuel. You don't know that it's fruit because you haven't been taught that, or you don't understand that. You think that you constantly want carbs and you can't stop eating carbs because your cells are starving. So that's one of the first signs we know that there's some type of blood sugar dysregulation and some type of insulin resistance. If you have, then you go do a test. So it might actually show on the test, but then if it doesn't quite show in the blood test as a raised levels of blood sugar, if you get diagnosed with fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver, that's a sign of blood sugar dysregulation. Another thing is if you get swollen ankles. So if you sort of go through periods of time where your ankles swell, that's a sign of high insulins as well. Let me know how many of you think you have an insulin issue, a sex hormone issue, cortisol issue. Let me know in the chats. Let me see. Amnes has combinations. Mona, I feel I have an imbalance in my stress hormones. Marwa, I had this adrenal fatigue before. I was not functioning anymore. And after I found out about my Hashimoto, I think it was trigger from my autoimmune thing. Yeah, they work together. I said the body is that the systems in the body don't work separately. Your stress hormones are not independent and don't work separately from your thyroid hormones. They're all related. Okay. Anybody else want to share which hormones for them are imbalanced, or if this has been like enlightening for you? Ismat, stress, Esma, stress. Yeah. And it's like a domino effect, right? Domino effect. But then the incredible thing, of course, because they're all interconnected, that once you start to balance one, you start to balance them all. So if your issue is diabetes, for example, you have insulin resistance and you focus on just lowering your insulin levels, you're automatically by default strengthening and your thyroid hormones. You're by default lowering your stress hormones. That's just how the body works. The body doesn't heal one thing and leave something else. It always heals everything. They might not heal at the same time, at the same pace, but the healing journey and the healing process will heal everything in your body that needs to be healing, even if you're not focused on every little thing that needs to be healed. Like if you have a thyroid issue and you're also very tired all the time and you have irregular periods and you have joint pain, maybe your focus is, I just want to get my period to be regular. So in your mind, you're just focusing on healing that. But as you heal that, you'll fix your joint pain, you'll fix your thyroid, you'll fix everything in the process. Okay, let me know if we have questions, ladies. Let's open it up for questions. Inji, why don't we start with you, because you wanted to ask me something at the beginning of the call.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
I want to ask you something now related to what you just said. How can we know that we have a hormonal imbalance concerning cortisol, for example, insulin resistance? How can we detect that, or do we need to get this tested?
You could, but I always recommend going by your body symptoms. What I can do after this call, I can list those symptoms for you in the group. So like if your sex hormones are imbalanced, I'll put a comprehensive list of the symptoms. Same thing for stress, same thing for insulin, and you can take a look for yourself. But it's easy. I mean, if you have an irregular period, that's sex hormones. If you have fibroids, that's sex hormones. If you have endometriosis or PCOS, that's sex hormones. If you have PMS, so before your period, you get really irritable, you get really bloated, you have really like tender breasts, that's sex hormones, right? It's not that hard to detect. And even if your period is regular, but you have those, because we're not supposed to have those symptoms, right? Remember that you're not supposed to. Everybody has normalized discomfort during our period. Everybody has normalized discomfort as we go through perimenopause and menopause. They're not normal. So if you have PMS, bloating, irritability, then if you have night sweats, if you have hot flashes, those are automatic signs of an imbalance in your sex hormones. If you have an imbalance in your thyroid hormones, like I said, is it the hypo or hyper? And I can put that in the group also so that you can be able to differentiate which one it might be for you. And then with the stress, right, we're talking about really the stress you can end up with high blood pressure, you end up with palpitations, you might end up with a heart disease, the adrenal fatigue, so like where you can't function anymore, you can't focus anymore. And then the insulin one is, like I said, it's the fatty liver, it's the constant hunger. Those are the symptoms that each one sort of corresponds to the specific set. And I'll put those on the group and then you can see which ones you have. It's very normal to see an overlap, and none of these symptoms are normal. And we know that there's a little bit, could be a little bit of an imbalance for you, it could be major imbalance for you. And that's going to go back to how many symptoms you have. And is it something like, I just get irritable every month before my period, or I have a missed period? Obviously you have a missed period if you're 35 or 34 and all of a sudden your period goes missing. That's a little bit too young, really young for your period to stop. So we know that's a major imbalance. If you're just looking at, I get irritable, I get night sweats, I get cravings, I get bloating, we're looking at a mild imbalance. So that also depends on which of the symptoms you're looking at. You can definitely go and get tested, but what I find happens with the testing is, because testing measures, it takes the averages of a general population, right? So the testing takes the numbers and bases the sort of the minimal and the average and the optimal based on the general population, the health of a general population. And we all know the general population is not very healthy. So you might go and you might test and it will show you that your thyroid function is normal. It's all within range, but you feel off. You know you're not normal. You know something's not right with you. But the doctor says, but look, according to this test, it's all within the right range. But the right range is not the optimal range because it's based on a population that is already suboptimally healthy. So you need to always focus on your symptoms and use your symptoms as the gauge for how you're improving or not. Does that answer that for you, Inji?
Yes, I think that's all right. I had another question. Can I?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, we talked about insulin resistance and a fatty liver.
Yeah.
And we said it's not related to fruits and all the healthy stuff that we should eat. But
Nope.
what if someone came to you with already insulin resistance and fatty liver? Would you still give them all this amount of fruits?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, this is where I said there's going to be a recalibration period. So I would do the same exact thing. And if they're testing and measuring, they might still find their insulin gets raised or gets elevated a little bit, and then they might panic and not want to do it because they're like, oh my God, look, it's still being raised. The reason it's because the insulin has been programmed for so many years. It's about reprogramming and having it and literally building up that trust again, getting rid of the insulin resistance. Like the cells have just become so used to not accepting anything from insulin. We have to retrain them a little bit. We have to like literally build up that trust that, okay, it's all right. This is the right sugar now. Let's please bring in the right sugar. It might take a couple of months and then it all settles and it's all fine. But yeah, I would do the exact same thing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I think I have a couple of things in the chat. Let me look. Marwa, why popcorn is bad, why corn is bad. Popcorn and corn, well, they're both come from corn. So corn is the source and corn is a genetically modified crop. Which means that the seed has been created in a lab and created in such a way that they wanted to create a very cheap crop that can serve as a staple. And so, and then when they grow it, you know, they can grow it so that it can give massive yields, right? And then they can use that specifically to basically create something called high fructose corn syrup that is put in every single packaged food. And it's highly, highly toxic because the body can't recognize it. And even if it's not in the form of the high fructose corn syrup, the corn itself, because it's become a genetically modified crop, just like wheat, your body doesn't recognize it. Your body can't break it down. It tags it as a poison inside you. They used to say popcorn is good. I mean, they also tell you brown bread is good, right? They tell, because it's a staple crop like wheat. It's a crop that they want to sell and make money out of. So popcorn, wheat, soy, all the seed oils, same story. But I mean, think about it. All of these foods, we call them dry, dead, and dumb foods. Now knowing everything that you know, and you hold a bunch of popcorn in your hand and you hold a bunch of grapes in your hand, in your gut, you know which one is the one that's good for you. Like, and in your gut, you can start to distinguish, right? This is dry, dead, lifeless. There's nothing in it. It's cardboard versus the foods that are bursting with vitamins and minerals and just alive. That's how you want to thrive and you want to feel alive. You eat the foods that are alive. You want to, you know, be tired and feel dead all the time inside. You eat the foods that are dead. That's basically the difference. Yasmin, any heart palpitations expected during the detox? I've had a couple over the past few days. Yes. So during the detox, so let's say during the next 3 to 6 days, you can do that. You can wake up with palpitations in the night. You can expect palpitations again as your body is rebalancing. If it lasts longer than that, and we're going to get into supplements soon, then that means that we're looking at a general magnesium deficiency. And I talked about that in my email and on social media today. General, if it lasts more than a few days or it becomes something regular, we've basically then tapped into that, Yasmin, okay? We've sort of removed the layers to really zoom in on what your deficiencies are. That will be magnesium deficiency. We add in the magnesium and that will settle out. Marwa, is menopause something to fear and be scared of? Can its symptoms of hot flashes be reversed? Yeah, no, there's nothing to fear. There's nothing scary about menopause. Has been in the past 60 years, basically has been created into this like event. Like it didn't even exist 60 years ago. Like the way that it exists now and the way that there's all of this drama around it did not exist 60, 70 years ago. Women used to just go through it very naturally. It's a very natural process. The same way that when you're 12 or 13, you get your period. When you got your period, Marwa, were you scared? I mean, I don't know. Most women are not scared when they get their period. And most women, girls, when we get our periods, we don't go to the doctor to interfere. And we don't go to a doctor so that he can try and stop it. Or you might take some medication if it's painful or something, but it's left alone. When you start the beginning of this process with menstruation, you're left alone. Nobody gets in the way of that process. Menopause is just the other end of that, journey. It starts with menstruation, ends with menopause. So for whatever reason, they've created this big movie around it when it's the most natural thing that our body does is to gradually shift out of being able to bear children to not. I mean, those of you in your 40s and 50s, do you really want to be able to have kids now? Like, thank you for menopause, right? And then they just created this unnecessary worry and fear around it again, because like any other disease, when they make you feel helpless, when they make you feel like you have no control over it, when they make you feel that there's no solution except to go take hormone replacement therapy or to go remove your uterus or to go, take out your, whatever it is, that takes away power from you. But when you understand that all the symptoms, ya Marwa, every single one, night sweats, hot flashes, painful periods, heavy periods, the moodiness, everything that you might be experiencing is optional, right? Going through perimenopause and menopause is not optional. That has to happen. The symptoms that come along with it, all of those are optional and they can all be reversed, but nobody wants to tell you that because then you become super powerful, super enlightened, super empowered, and you're not going to just take the advice that, oh, that's just how it is. Oh, that's just how you have to live with it. You're not going to take that lightly. You're going to know that that's not true. You're going to know that you can go home, follow a program like this, get rid of all the symptoms, and have the best time of your life during perimenopause and menopause. So, no. You're welcome, Yasmin, and you're welcome, Marwa. Esma, do you have another question, comment?
Yes, I wanted to ask about dates, because usually before this program, I used to have 3 dates in the morning. And then I don't remember if I read it somewhere or someone told me that it's too much sugar in the morning and I should add a nut to it. So I'm not sure if this is correct or not.
Nope, no such thing as too much sugar in dates or too much sugar in mangoes or too much sugar in grapes, watermelons. What are all the ones that they try to scare you away from? No such thing. You don't need to balance the sugar with nuts. You don't need to do any of that. As you can see, we have plenty of dates on the program. Enjoy your dates. They're incredibly healing. Nuts are another story. You may or may not choose to add them in later on. Again, they're a good fat, but so they need to be consumed from 12 p.m. onwards when and if you choose to consume them. And nuts also are going to be, in nuts, legumes, beans, they will contain phytic acid. So they might or might not work for everybody in the same way. They might get in the way of the way your body absorbs other nutrients. They are a good fat, but there is such thing as too much of a good thing. And if you consume them early in the morning, then they clog the liver. They can do that. The best way to consume nuts is raw, roasted and raw. And no more than a little handful, and no peanuts, only the other peanuts, or only the other nuts. Mona, go ahead.
Hi, Dana. I think what she was saying, عشان أنا كمان I follow that in general in my life. هي في الفكرة بتاعت إنه when you take anything with sugar, when you have a full meal with like protein and carbs, it kind of balances the spike that whatever that sugar is going to cause in your system.
You said
the
it right
insulin
there.
spike. So when you have sugar with something else, it kind of doesn't make that spike go up.
Right. The insulin should not be spiking, period. So if somebody's trying to find a fix around an insulin spike, it's because it's the wrong sugar causing a spike, right? Dates are not going to cause a spike. Whether you eat them with nuts or not, they're not going to cause a spike. The only thing that causes a spike in blood sugar are the processed carbohydrates, not the sugars from fruits. So that statement in of itself, if somebody was explaining it to you that way, or you've read it that way, like that's incorrect at its core, at the foundation of that statement. It's incorrect because what they're doing, first of all, they're assuming that all carbohydrates are the same, which they're not. Processed carbohydrates are very different than the natural carbohydrates in fruits and vegetables. And they're assuming that the sugar in fruits is going to spike the same way that the sugar in processed carbohydrates spikes. And they are basically not differentiating between the two sugars. That basically, when they tell you like it just eradicates an argument at its core, right there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Mona, I need a substitute to apples. I can eat them in recipes, but all alone I can't. Okay, so apples, ladies, try them as applesauce. So you can steam the apples to soften them and then blend them in your blender with a little bit of cinnamon. If that doesn't work, you just still can't do it, then yes, pears can be a good substitute for that. Pears. If you can't do apples, do pears. But try the applesauce, it's pretty good. It's like a little dessert. Mona, another question, or is your hand still up?
My hand was still up, but I actually can ask another question.
Okay.
I had told you a while back that I had done tests and كنت عملت test for fructose intolerance وطلعت intolerant. أنا مش فاكرة أنت قلتي لي إيه.
There's no such thing.
But I'm having the dates and I'm having the apples. يعني I'm doing everything you're telling us to do. And
Yeah.
I'm bloated like hell. فبس بتأكد عايزة أتأكد تاني أنت كنتي قلتي that test is nonsense. حاجة كده صح؟
It's nonsense. Here's the thing.
But it was like a 3-hour test. Like I was blowing in tubes for like every 20 minutes. Like it was a pretty intense test. Yeah.
You know, it really blows my mind. And this is like I'm not picking on anybody. Blows my mind, right? So people will go and do tests to see if they're fructose intolerant, to see if they're intolerant to avocados or strawberries or whatever it is. But nobody ever questions drinking Diet Pepsi, right? Nobody ever questions eating a bag of chips. Nobody ever questions eating packaged cereal. Nobody ever questions eating Indomie, right? Nobody ever questions Pringles. Nobody, like you need to, and then they make up these crazy tests, expensive tests that are useless, whether it's the fructose intolerance test or the food sensitivities test, totally useless. With the fructose intolerance test, what it does is it basically picks up on any sugar that's in your body. Okay, so let's say you ate a chocolate bar 5 days before you went. That can trigger the test, right? If you had anything with, you know, that there's different names for sugar, anything that ends in OSE is sugar. So let's say you had cheese on the day you did the test, or even a week before you did the test, right? That's sugar. That's going to show up on the test. So it's an incredibly inaccurate tool. They don't do you just such bullshit. I'm sorry. It's just they don't do us they do us such a disservice of not
امبارح قلت لك بروتين شيك والنهارده قلت لك فروكتوز.
It's good. You're bringing up these things like, come on, like.
But to be fair, where I was, there was definitely, and I don't eat Pringles or processed, I don't do this أصلاً. but obviously it is something that people talk about.
Yeah, but no, like people, it's almost as if people want to go, and again, I'm not saying that this is you or anybody here, but it's almost like people want to go to such lengths to prove that something healthy doesn't work for them, almost, or to prove that something unhealthy does work for them. So the amount of women I've seen who did the intolerance test because they want to prove that they're okay with gluten, so I don't have to stop eating gluten. Well, you know why there's a problem with that test? In order for that test to show you truly if you are gluten sensitive or not, in order to do the test, you have to have been completely off of gluten for 6 months to get the accurate result on that test. Nobody does that. And so I'll have women come say, look, it shows that I'm okay with gluten, right? And a lot of women, it will show that they're not, but the ones who show, look, I'm not sensitive, I can have bread. Number one, did you go without gluten for 6 months before you did the test? No. Number two, do you know that even if it looks like you're okay with gluten now, the issue with gluten and corn and soy and all that list that we have is that it creates something called silent inflammation. Silent. So you might be eating your gluten today, you might be eating your corn today, you might be drinking your Diet Coke today, and you feel fine today. But they're creating what's called silent inflammation, a very slow, systematic erosion of your system for the past 30 years, until then you come today to the 21-day detox and you have endometriosis, PCOS, bloating, digestive issues, irregular period, hair loss. That's when it's not silent anymore. Like it's all the symptoms you have now are a result of the silent inflammation for years and years and years and years and years. And then the body can't stay silent anymore. So, and then what happens now, you have these maybe mild symptoms. Some of you don't feel like it's mild at all, but they're mild symptoms. It's like it's not a full-blown disease. But if you were to ignore what your body now is showing you, like, right, the way you're eating is not working, if you ignore it, you decided not to do this program, or you decided like, this is just nonsense, I'm just going to keep eating the foods that I've always eaten, the silent inflammation will keep working. It doesn't ever stop until you intentionally put a stop to it. So it keeps working very, very silently until 5-10 years from now, you have full-blown diabetes, or you have full-blown high blood pressure, or you have full-blown heart disease, or you have full-blown cancer or Alzheimer's. That's the end, right, of silent inflammation. You're kind of in the middle of it right now. You paid attention, you're doing something about it. You ignore it, it doesn't go away and it doesn't stop. It stays silently eroding away at your body. All of these adult onset diseases have their roots in childhood. That's how resilient and strong our bodies are. They keep fighting, 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 but the inflammation is ongoing, but the body's fighting till it can't stop, can't fight anymore. That's when we see disease. Which is also really important for those of you who have kids, right? So what we're doing is damage control. If we can bring up our kids with a completely different foundation, they're not going to go through these issues at all. They're not going to have to do damage control. They're going to set themselves up without the silent inflammation as they grow and get older. How can I transfer my roasted veggies into a soup? Blend. So after you roast your veggies or boil them or whatever it is you're going to do with them, take them, put them in your blender with a little bit of vegetable broth or a little bit of water and blend them for like 4 to 5 minutes, depending on the strength of your blender, and puree them until they're really, really soft. You might need to add a little bit more broth or water, and that's it. Ismet, I really want to know how to make this work with my daughter. How old is your daughter? For mothers, I always say it has to start with you. It has to start with you. You can't convince anybody to do something unless you are 100% convinced of it, unless you have 100% gone through the process yourself, unless you are a living, breathing example, embodiment of this, okay? With a 6-year-old, you are in control. So I want to say, like, until 8 or so, you're still in control. So basically, you decide what she has for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's 6, you're lucky. 8 and above is very difficult, very problematic. It's when they start seeing and paying attention to what other people are eating. Teenagers like my son go out and eat with their friends. I don't even want to know what he eats with his friends every weekend, and it's okay, as long as I know he's eating healthy at home. So you want to implement this gradually, moms. Again, you're starting with yourself. And depending on the age of your child, you want to add things in before you remove things. With a 6-year-old, I mean, when I first became a health coach, my kids were 15, 14, and so my son was 3. He was 3 or 4. He didn't get a choice. He's 3 or 4. I'm in charge. Just took out the dairy, took out the bread, took out the toast, took out the cereal, just took it out, like threw it out of the house. We're done. We're never seeing it again. And he started having juices. Done. Of course, my daughters were teenagers at the time. It was a struggle with them. And eventually they got over it. But the younger your kids are, I mean, don't forget, you're the one in charge. You're the one in charge, especially at that age. So let her, for now, like experiment with what you're eating. Give her, like, just ask her, do you want to taste my smoothie? Do you want to taste my applesauce? Here, I'm having apples and dates. Have some apples and dates. Add things. So add a lot of fruits to her snacks at school. Add chopped up vegetables, again, to her lunchbox. When she's eating in the morning, whatever it is that she's eating, add fruits to it. If she's having cereal, even if she's having a sandwich in the morning, whatever it is, add fruits and vegetables to what's pre-existing. And then you can slowly remove the things that we know don't serve them. And this can take several months with kids. There's a Q&A. Delia, can you please mention the applesauce recipe? Basically, you just steam your apples or boil, chop up the apples and boil them, peel them. And then they're going to be really nice and soft and mushy. Put them in the blender with a little bit of water. Again, blend them until they're smooth. Add a little bit of cinnamon. And that's it. You can put a squeeze of lemon juice if you want also. But it's super simple. That's all you do. You're welcome. Anybody else have a question for me? Mona, is that you again? Or you forgot your hand up?
أنا مش شايفة بس I can ask actually.
Okay, go ahead.
سؤال هو ميزو because also I was away at a spa for a while and I felt great but they did a lot of healing with miso. So you're saying that soy also isn't خلاص soy كده كده مفهوم. فis miso also not
Yeah, so miso is a fermented soy, all right? So that's a little bit different than like just soy milk, for example, right? Or straightforward soy. So this I would say is I wouldn't rule it out completely, but it's not like a go-to, right? It's not a staple, especially, I mean, it's not easily available for one thing, right? You want to also use like the fruits and vegetables are things that are there for you. Like you can find them. And if you can't find them, there's easy substitutes. You don't want to become dependent on something that's healing that you don't have constant access to. So
and I'm asking because I got while I was there.
I don't
should I go back to that or not? But
no, I would stick to the basics, and especially that we see there's like, you know, we see a whole bunch of digestive issues with you. Let's just keep it to the basics, like just, you know, the ABC of nutrition, which is fruits and vegetables and some protein. Let's like simplify it as much as possible.
ماشي بس أنا sorry معلش بطول هو أنا ماشية معاك يعني I'm doing what you're asking me بس أنا يعني ما هو eventually I'm gonna هزهق من bloating يعني
yeah.
And now because I know like I understand the idea of gut scrubbers and like I understand a lot of what you're doing and I feel يعني I'm starting to get my energy back.
Yeah.
But I am bloated all the time and I kind of understand now what type of food bloats me. فقصدي I do need breaks من vegetables وكده. فاهمة قصدي like I need I kind of need to balance things out شوية.
So let's get through the 9 days, okay? And then after the 9 days, you'll get to choose how to move forward. If somebody has severe, you know, there's like overload of pathogens and bacteria and stuff, and you're willing to go with the process, you could sit with this bloating for months. Let's put it that way, okay? And then it will balance. But if you don't want to, because it's not sustainable, it's not comfortable, you don't have to, and you can still heal at a slower pace, then I would recommend you move on to fewer raw salads specifically, and more with the cooked vegetables, more with the potato breakfast instead of the raw smoothie, more with I wouldn't add celery juice, I wouldn't increase celery juice, for example, as you would in the next cleanse. We just keep it where it's at. So it goes back to you, how fast and how deep you want to heal. If the bloating becomes, let's say it's at a 8 today, for example, 8 out of 10. And then by next week, it becomes like a 6 out of 10. It might be worth it to wait it out one more week and see if it goes down to like a 4 out of 10. Maybe it goes down to a 2 out of 10. Like it's still there. It's still not 100% comfortable, but at least you're seeing the signs of like you're reaching these milestones of healing. So for everybody here, like don't jump the gun. Like you don't we call it future tripping. Literally just take it one day at a time. And already you say like, you're feeling a little bit better. So for you to feel a little bit better means the digestive system is a little bit strengthened. It's a little bit fortified than what it used to be this time last week. So it does take patience, and it is just doing more of the same boring stuff. Unfortunately, that's what healing is about. So take it one day at a time, and let's see where you're at next week. And then I just want you to finish the 9 days and see then how you want to proceed after the 9 days. You can definitely take it down and do the easier cleanse, which will remove all the raw vegetables specifically, and that will get rid of all the bloating for you. Oops, one more question. Delia, what's the maximum tablespoon of olive oil in our food? One full tablespoon a day. Esma, do you have another question for me?
Yes, I do. So I understand that you start the day with smoothies because you want everything liquid. But for later on, is it okay if I added the smoothie like after it's blended, the half of the banana or the half of the mango? Sometimes I like some solids in to feel full. I don't know why, for some reason.
Yes, yeah. After, depending on what your symptoms are, you can after this just have fruits for breakfast, right? If you want to wake up and have 2 mangoes and 2 bananas, you can do that for breakfast, as long as we're looking at just fruits or vegetables. Or like in the hybrid cleanse, you're going to notice there's a potato recipe for breakfast. You can do that also. But again, for each one of you, that's going to depend on your symptoms. If you're still struggling with a lot of symptoms, I recommend staying with the liquids in the morning to really, really ease the load off your liver. The next best thing after that is fresh fruits or like boiled potatoes or one of the potato recipes. Again, easier on the liver. Yeah, so you can do that. Mona, is that you again? No. All right. Okay. Anybody else have any more questions for me, ladies? None at all. Okay. Tomorrow is going to be your day 10. I think it's either day 10 or 11. I always forget. It's the day you get potatoes. So it's always an exciting day for everybody, whether that's tomorrow or the day after. Enjoy it. Make sure if you're thinking about weekend plans from now, Friday is your juice day. Stay at home for your juice day. Not just because you're going to be having to make all of these juices, not just because it's going to potentially take you down deeper and give you a few more detox symptoms. You're going to need a bathroom because you're going to be drinking liquids all day. You want to relax. You want to, again, take care of you, prioritize you. It's going to be, the culmination of 9 days. You want it to really, really work for you. And the way to do that is not to push the body and do what you normally do. And I'm just going to still go out and live my life and go here and visit people here and do this. No, you want to cocoon yourself and relax. So if you think ahead, you're always like thinking at least a couple of days ahead. And if people are making plans with you, apologize, say, I'm taking time off, I'm taking a day off for me, I'm doing whatever it is I'm doing, whichever way you want to explain to them, and really, 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 getting to that last day, you've gotten there. So you want to make sure that you protect your time and energy and your effort around it. All right. Okay, ladies, see you all tomorrow, same time, same place. Bye.